Before the Marvel Cinematic Universe exploded in popularity and introduced him to pretty much everyone on the planet, Iron Man was already a major player within Marvel's stable of heroes. And as such, there have been a lot of different versions of him across the years. As Marvel does rather often, we've gotten to see Iron Men from all across the multiverse, each with their own unique spin, including some that make the standard comic book Tony Stark look weak by comparison. So how about this? Let's go ahead and take a look at a small handful of the vast number of Iron Men that we've seen in comics, games, movies, everything. And then go ahead and rank them by power because why not? Rankings are fun. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and dive right into it. Let's start this list off with what is potentially the least powerful Iron Man in the entire multiverse, though it's at no fault of this particular Tony Stark, as he is simply just limited by the technology of his time. Get it? Like the line that Howard Stark said in Iron Man 2? You know, the one that Reddit tried to turn into a meme for like a week? Earth 311 is, at face value, nothing out of the ordinary within the Marvel multiverse. No crazy animal people or broken laws of physics here. There is only one small change that makes things different. That being the fact that heroes here made their debut several hundred years before they did anywhere else, giving us the Marvel 1602 comic event. Lord Iron here had been taken prisoner and tortured during the English-Spanish War. In order to escape and survive, he built a suit of armor powered by this newfangled electricity that everyone was talking about, which granted him super strength and electric-based attacks. He then went on and swore to seek vengeance against the man who was responsible for his injury, David Banner, the one who would go on to become this universe's version of the Hulk. Which, you know, might have been a fight that worked out for other versions of Tony Stark, but I cannot see how things would go all that well here. Probably for the best that he ultimately abandoned his quest for revenge and wound up befriending Banner. Now, the armor is about as rudimentary as Iron Man style suits get. It doesn't have jet engines, repulsors, or complex AI systems. But considering that it was built in the 1600s, it's incredibly impressive for what it is. That being said, if there was ever to be a mass battle royale between all of the Iron people of the multiverse, Lord Iron would more than likely get taken out pretty early on. That's really okay though, as the rest of the Iron Men on this list are a lot more viable in that department. So let's go ahead and take a look at them, shall we? I figured that I should probably include arguably the most famous version of Iron Man somewhere on this list. Making his debut in his own 2008 solo film, which also happened to launch the MCU proper, Iron Man from Earth 199999, also known as the Marvel Cinematic Universe, is rather similar to his comic counterparts. Borrowing elements from both the mainline continuity and Ultimate Universe versions of the character, this Tony Stark started out his life as a rich, self-centered narcissist, albeit one with a genius-level intellect. However, after a life-changing event, his whole outlook on life shifted, and he became the Iron Man that we all know and love. Did I actually need to recap what we saw in the MCU? I mean, pretty much everyone on the planet has seen these movies by this point. No, not really, but it was fun, so I did it anyways. MCU Stark has some astounding tech, showcasing suits based off of some of the most iconic armors from the comics, such as the Mark 50 armor he wore in Infinity War and Endgame, which was made up of nanites that allowed him to not only have the armor on him at all times, but also reshape it at will. That armor was meant to be similar to his Extremis armor from the comics, that was made up of nanites that lived inside his body that he could summon whenever he needed to suit up. Sadly, MCU Iron Man is pretty close to the baseline Iron Man, so he doesn't get to go too far up this list rankings-wise. However, since he technically achieved omnipotence when he wielded the Infinity Stones for all of about 30 seconds at the end of Endgame, that alone is enough for me to place him above Iron Lord at least, so there is that. Green Goblin is easily one of the most iconic villains in comic history, and his Goblin formula has made him a massive threat to more than just the webhead. But what would happen if somebody else were to be exposed to the Goblin formula? Well, that is a question that we had answered by the version of Tony Stark that hailed from Earth 19919. By the way, to all the Marvel writers and editors who are totally watching this video, I would really appreciate it if you stopped putting repeating numbers into all of your Earth number designations. It makes my job unnecessarily difficult. You go ahead and try to say the right number of 9s in rapid succession. It's not that easy. During the Spider Island event, Stark was infected with the spider virus, turning him into an arachnid slave of the Spider Queen. As he was battling some resistance members, he was sprayed with the Goblin formula, which reverted him back to a more human form, but caused him to take on characteristics of the Green Goblin. In order to get back at Norman Osborn in some small way for the whole Iron Patriot situation, Stark took Osborn's experimental Goblin armor and combined it with his own Iron Man suit, dubbing himself the Iron Goblin. Basically, he's Iron Man with Green Goblin's superhero strength, speed, and healing factor. But in order to help the Resistance fighters escape being captured by the Spider Army, Iron Goblin also picked up the Black Knight's ebony blade, and presumably also wielded at least some of BK's powers as he fought and ultimately sacrificed himself. If that isn't enough to convince you of the sheer power of this version of Iron Man, I don't really know what else I could tell you. The dude is just plain awesome. And presumably, if he had lived for just a little while longer, he would have gone mad just like Norman did, and possibly turned into an even more terrifying villain, which would have made life all the more worse for the heroes as they tried to deal with the Spider Queen's shenanigans. That is definitely one potential multiversal villain that I wouldn't mind seeing pop up somewhere. This variant of Iron Man might be seen as kind of cheating in the eyes of some of you, as it isn't actually Tony Stark or anyone related to him in the armor, but the character is referred to as Iron Man, so I think it totally counts. After realizing that his villainous ways were not as fulfilling as he had hoped, Victor Von Doom, aka Dr. Doom, sought instead to become a force for good in the world. To that end, he began working alongside Tony Stark, someone who he had always viewed as an equal of sorts, and for a time, the two got along fairly well, all things considered. However, once the Second Civil War was over, Stark fell into a deep coma. Feeling that this was the perfect opportunity to truly make a difference, Doom donned the Iron Man armor himself, taking on the mantle and setting off to try to become a proper hero. The infamous Iron Man is exactly what you would think it would be. Dr. Doom, with all of his magical abilities and genius-level intellect, crammed into one of the most advanced weapon platforms in existence. This Model 51 Iron Man armor was further modified by Doom, granting him capabilities such as flight, magnetic manipulation, and even the ability to cloak, which is about as badass as it gets. While he did eventually give up the armor and return to his more iconic outfit, his time as Iron Man definitely left an impression on comic readers the world over. Seeing one of the most powerful magic users in all of comics slinging spells and enchantments in between repulsor blasts is as awesome as it sounds. Maybe at some point in the future we'll get to see more magic combined with tech in such a manner. It's really kind of like a you got your chocolate in my peanut butter kind of situation. Just great all around. Actually, now that I think about it, I do think that I've seen that somewhere before. Maybe it's the kind of thing that we might revisit here a little bit later on in the list. Who knows? I'm not gonna tell. Here's a little bit of a fun fact about me. My favorite superhero of all time is Green Lantern, specifically Hal Jordan. And to answer your question, yes, the fact that despite being in the middle of a massive superhero film boom, the only cinematic representation of my favorite hero has come via that god-awful Ryan Reynolds film is about as painful as you'd imagine. And the constant teasing of a DCEU Green Lantern film and then a Green Lantern show is only making the whole thing feel worse. All of that aside, did you know that Tony Stark and Hal Jordan were once combined together, creating an entirely new character? I'm talking about Hal Stark, aka Iron Lantern. Hal Stark's journey as a hero began when he survived an odd crash that left him with metal shards embedded in his chest. Nearby was a dying alien whose tech Hal used to build himself a suit of armor in order to stay alive long enough to seek proper medical attention. Powered by a bizarre battery that he found amongst the crash alien ship that looks suspiciously like a lantern, the Iron Lantern armor basically grants Hal all of the powers of both regular Iron Man and a Green Lantern, giving him the tech and armor of Iron Man with the hard light constructs of a lantern. And if that doesn't sound completely badass to you, I think that you need to go read up on what a Green Lantern can do, because it's totally awesome. Admittedly, I am gushing just a little bit since I am, a Lantern fan, but still, they're super powerful. While we only ever got to see Hal Stark in a one-off comic, presented as though it was part of a much longer running series, Iron Lantern has left quite the mark on comic fans who have heard about him. Often when people are talking about the Amalgam comics, he is one of the characters that people bring up, alongside the likes of Darkclaw, Amazon, Super Soldier, and of course, Lobo the Duck. And yes, all of those were real. Even that last one. Maybe someday, if Marvel and DC can find it in their hearts to play nice with one another again, we might see a return of the Amalgam universe, and with it, a proper run of Iron Lantern comics. Or at least one more issue. I want to see what happens when he goes up against Mandarin and Estro. Or maybe they could do what the comics did and give us more Green Lanterns. Take Kyle Rayner and James Rhodes and smash them together. Kyle Rhodes. I'd be down. It'd be pretty neat to see. I'm not the biggest Kyle Rayner fan, but I think that it would work pretty well. Keeping with the whole idea of combining well-known characters together, spoiler alert, the final entry will continue this trend as well, we have an entry hailing from the What If comic series that ran from 1977 to 2011. This is what would happen if Tony Stark became the Sorcerer Supreme. Yes, really. Basically, what happened in this storyline is that Tony Stark was in the same car accident that damaged Stephen Strange's hands. Feeling a bit responsible, Stark traveled with him to Tibet to try to discover a magical cure for his hands. Instead of Strange stepping up and revealing the treachery of Baron Mordo to the Ancient One, Stark did, and started training in the mystical arts himself. This Tony Stark had all of the same abilities as any other universe's Stephen Strange, all of the same magical potential. In addition to that, he also utilized the Sorcerer Armor, a special Iron Man suit made up of an unknown metal obtained by the Vishanti, and enchanted in every imaginable way. It even features the Eye of Agamotto inset into the chest, right about where the arc reactor normally is, which is a nice touch if you ask me. He wore this suit into battle against Dormammu, the ruler of the Dark Dimension, and it played a big part in him winning the day, though the armor was lost in the process as it was used to trap Dormammu and send him away. It's a super cool version of the character that would be awesome to see in Multiverse of Madness. That is, if we're gonna see more alternate variations of the Sorcerer Supreme, which based off the trailer and all the TV spots and stuff, it kinda looks like that might be the case. Or maybe all the rumors are right and we'll just get a Tom Cruise version of Tony Stark, which is cool too, I guess. Finally, we come to the most powerful version of Tony Stark, a version that came about when the Shellhead was combined with one of, if not the, most powerful Avenger, the God of Thunder himself, Thor. When Gamora got a hold of the Infinity Stones, she used them to lock the souls of the universe away within the Soul World. You know, that place that we saw Thanos talk to a young Gamora in during Infinity War. That's basically the inside of the Soul Stone. In order to largely incapacitate people, and more than likely save some space in there, she went ahead and folded the universe in half, causing everyone to be merged with the soul of another, creating sort of like weird amalgamations of people. Among them was Stark Odinson, a combination of Tony Stark and Thor Odinson. This character, known as Iron Hammer, wore armor similar to Iron Man's, though it was infused with magical energies and technology from across the realms. He also wielded a giant hammer known as Mjolnir, which allowed him to fully access the powers of the armor and throw the occasional thunderbolt for good measure. I also guarantee that I completely mispronounced the name of that hammer, but cut me a little bit of slack here. It's a weird combination of Mjolnir and iron that just doesn't flow very well. Here it is written if you want to go ahead and give it a shot. It's not that easy. Inside the suit was Stark's onboard AI, Heimdall, which was so capable that it was said that it could have even seen for Stark should he ever become blinded. Saying that he had the combined capabilities of both Iron Man and Thor, should really be enough to illustrate to you why this guy is at the top of this list. This dude is completely badass. Sadly, we probably won't get much more of a chance to see him in the future, as the Infinity Wars event is long since over. But you know, maybe someday we'll see a Spider-Verse-esque crossover of a bunch of different Iron Men. That way we could see the return of Iron Hammer as well as pretty much everyone else on this list. It's probably not gonna happen, but hey, a nerd can dream, right? Hey there everybody, I'm John Aljets. I made this video and I want to know what you think. Which of these Iron Men do you think is the most powerful? Be sure to let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, or go ahead and shoot me a response over on Twitter. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks for watching, and be sure to subscribe to CBR for more great videos just like this in the future.